And then for my question, so do you want to talk about Bernie or do you want to talk about unions?
Well, I'm going to get to Bernie in a minute. So tell me, what's the union question? Obviously, I should have top-lined it. The unions are on strike. The GM workers. I've heard that Kaiser Permanente workers might go on strike. I mean, if these strikes
Yeah, that's
intensify,
supposed
this
to be
is
one of the biggest strikes of
yes,
recent memory,
this is
if I'm hearing right.
hugely important. So tell me about strikes.
Okay, well, it's kind of like a muse slash question. So we know that unions have been like thoroughly destroyed and defanged over recent history to the point where while they're still doing some good things for American workers, they're largely distrusted. I find, and people don't particularly care about them anymore. And it's becoming increasingly obvious that we need to have like worker protections of some kind in place in this country. So like my muse slash question is like what can we do to protect unions, I guess? Because I mean, short of like institutionalizing them within the U.S. government with protections of some kind, I don't know how we can prevent the same mistakes we made in the past from happening again, where they get co-opted, they get defanged, and they get demonized, and a couple other D words if you can think of any.
Well, I
Like,
think
what are your
I
thoughts on that?
think what well, I mean, there's a lot that needs to happen. So one, let's start with what they're actually doing right. I mean, we have people going on strike right now, and we should be getting them sandwiches and pizza, and having utmost solidarity with them, and also the people in Harlan County in Kentucky. I mean, these are by far some of the most significant and important things happening in America. Strikes, those teacher strikes in places like West Virginia and Chicago, it just can't be overstated how fundamental and important. I mean, there's really nothing more important in politics in many respects than a powerful labor union movement. So, then the broader question of what labor, yes, there's a discrediting of labor unions that spans everything from a relentless propaganda and institutional war against them from the most powerful forces in the world, whether you're talking about individual companies like Walmart or just capital itself as a global class. And then starting in the late 70s, when the sort of Keynesian arrangement started to collapse, and we went through this aggressive waves of neoliberalization, which we're still living under, that is locked and loaded at the labor union movement. And so then you have, yes, there's some labor union corruption and dysfunction and parochialism for sure, but then there's also just, justifiable short-sightedness is how I'll put it. If you're under attack from every single side, you're going to look for small wedges of how to protect yourself and your workers, and that's beyond understandable. And this is
Right.
this is another case now where it's just like the Sanders campaign. It's like, look, the least quote unquote reasonable or pragmatic or all these other overused to the point of meaningless words is really the only rational course right now. And that's why people are striking, right? Striking is a dangerous and terrifying thing to do. GM just stripped 42,000 people of their health insurance for striking, which is another reason that single payer healthcare is elemental to the battle for working class politics. So it's a massive risk, and people are doing it because they are so squeezed and so abused by capital that they have, whether in capital in the broadest sense, whether it's austerity in the form of underpaying and disrespecting and demonizing teachers, or being a GM worker who's relentlessly underpaid and so on, even after you agreed to take cuts when the companies got bailed out by the federal government. It could have been workers and small businesses that were bailed out, not the shareholder class, right? So so I don't know. I know that strikes in a labor union movement could not be more important. It's elemental. The other big thing is, to beat a drum, I'll be upfront about. I'm going to keep beating and beating and beating. Electing Bernie Sanders president. I mean, we haven't even talked about his workplace democracy plan. if he bans right to work legislation, that I was talking to a Canadian political analyst recently. He was saying not only would that help tens of 20 million, all of America that isn't capital class holders, that would profoundly help Canadian workers. It would profoundly help Mexican workers. You need to have somebody who isn't just sort of vaguely pro-labor-ish. You need somebody who understands that labor power is the foundation of progressive politics and clawing power
labor
back.
Needs hero right now.
Yeah, so back strikes, have solidarity. I think, at least for me, I was talking with somebody recently who actually I met at the Chicago Live show who's doing amazing work organizing Amazon workers. And I think we need to talk with labor union. I mean, look, labor union organizers are, they're by far some of the most important people on the planet. We need to be listening to them. We need to be following their guidance, and we need to be getting strategic as anything. And then big picture, we 100% need to elect Bernie Sanders president. He's the most pro-worker candidate in modern American history. So, we have the tools. It's a question of whether or not we'll take action. I appreciate the call, brother. Thank you.
Not a problem. Take care, man.
Take care. All right, let's actually play this clip. This is Bernie Sanders. He was at the Workers' Presidential Summit, and he talks about how he will use the federal government to advocate for workers. And again, this is somebody who's put forward a plan that would do everything from ban right to work to set up tax structures to support worker cooperative businesses.
We can use the power of the federal government to say to corporations, do the right thing. Treat your employees with respect and dignity, and you get good federal contracts. Treat your employees with contempt and disrespect, you're going to get to the very back of that line.
That's it. And he's got a 40-year track record to prove it. And he actually did a lot of these things when he was mayor of Burlington, in fact. Look up his record. Incredibly successful.
I hope we have the luxury of having this problem. But if Bernie were to win the presidency, we're going to hear people say that what he's doing in that regard, pressuring companies to be better for their employees, is Trump-like fascist controlling of
those idiots are already saying that. That's the Yasha Monk world. All right, who is the worst. But Yasha Monk is a great case study of what happens to young academics when the social sciences and humanities are totally starved.
Yeah,
and it's much better to be a court gesture for the
Tony
Davos
Blair.
set and the Tony Blair than actually do real academic work to help the world. It's kind of sad.
He's a fraud.
He sucks.